We're following the escalating battle for Iraq and the flashpoints across the region. There's a lot to talk about with the deputy spokeswoman for the State Department, Marie Harf. She's here in the Situation Room with us once again. Marie, thanks very much for coming in. All right, so Nouri al-Maliki tells the BBC, you just heard it, that he wants to get fighter jets now from Russia and Belarus. He says the U.S. is too slow in delivering its commitments. He's basically blaming the United States for some of the problems he's now facing. Is this a loyal ally? Is this someone who should be grateful to the United States for the blood and treasure that the U.S. provided over nearly a decade there?
Well, Wolf, I think that this kind of blame of others in the outside is, quite frankly, part of what's gotten Iraq into the situation it's in today. It's helped create this crisis. When we left Iraq, we gave the Iraqis the ability to create a better future. And unfortunately, leaders across the spectrum didn't step up and didn't take that opportunity. They blamed others and they didn't bring the country together. So, look, we are going to work with them as they fight this threat, but they need to stop looking outside of Iraq and start doing a little bit more looking in the mirror at what they actually have to do.
What do you think of the decision by him to go ahead and ask Russia and Belarus for warplanes?
Well, we've said that other countries can provide assistance to Iraq, some of what we're doing as well. There's a process to do that. If it's all in the service of promoting inclusiveness, of helping fight ISIL, but doing that underneath this broad rubric of inclusiveness in the government. So, look, if Russia's willing to do that, obviously they need a lot of help right now.
What do you think about his statement that he welcomes Bashar al-Assad's Air Force coming in to bomb ISIS targets inside Iraq?
Well, as I said the other night, I think on this very show, the Iraqi security challenge is not going to be solved by the Assad regime. I mean, the reason ISIL is so strong today, the reason they're such a force is because of the Assad regime. So it's counterintuitive, I think, to think that the same regime that has allowed this terrorist group to flourish and grow in strength would be part of the solution here.
The Secretary of State, we discussed this, John Kerry, he goes to Baghdad, he makes a direct appeal to Nouri al-Maliki, the prime minister, who then, after Kerry leaves, seems to do not what he wants. He seems to do the opposite. Is that a friend?
Well, we've seen Prime Minister Maliki say publicly he's committed to forming a government as soon as possible. We've seen the Iraqi vice president say that. Today we saw Grand Ayatollah Sistani say the same thing, that they need to come together and form an inclusive government as soon as possible. And look, I think we're going to see in the next few days whether Iraq's leaders are up to the challenge, whether they step up to the plate, realize the emergency that's at hand, and really take some steps to do things differently.
You don't really think they will, though, do you?
Well, I do think Iraq's leaders understand how serious the situation is. I think they look around their country and they know they need to do things differently. If you look at the last election in Iraq, what all of the candidates ran on, even Prime Minister Maliki, was change and doing things differently. And I think what's happened in the last few weeks has certainly underscored
Yesterday, the Obama administration asked Congress to approve $500 million to equip, train, arm moderate Syrian rebels fighting ISIS in Syria, fighting the Bashar al-Assad regime. There's a lot of concern, though. You give them those weapons, they could wind up in the hands of the Bashar al-Assad regime or wind up in the hands of ISIS. Look what's happened in Iraq.
Well, that's why we vet people before we give them any assistance.
What
certainly
guarantee is that they can use those weapons, hold on to those weapons, and make sure those weapons don't get into the wrong hands?
Well, we go through a very rigorous vetting process, which I think is what actually leads some people to think that this should happen more quickly. But we do this very deliberately to try and prevent exactly what you're saying, because the opposition, the moderate opposition, is fighting a war on two fronts. They're fighting the Assad regime and they're fighting ISIL, and they need more help, and that's what we're going to provide.
Because I'm sure that the moderate Syrian rebels that you are vetting, on paper they look great. They hate Bashar al-Assad, they hate ISIS. But the question is, do they have the military capability of securing those weapons, securing what the United States is about to provide them, and make sure that they don't get into the wrong hands? They have good intentions, but how capable are they really?
Well, we're working with them to improve their capabilities in exactly that way. We've been working with them for several years now. We've continued to increase our assistance to them. And as we find members of the moderate opposition we do think can get this assistance and use it to fight the Assad regime and to fight these terrorists, we're going to help them do it.
Because you saw what happened in Mosul. The U.S. left a lot of tanks, armored personnel carriers, sophisticated equipment, mortars, all sorts of stuff there. The Iraqi military, which the U.S. trained and equipped, the cost of billions of dollars in U.S. taxpayer money, they simply took off their uniforms, ran away. ISIS got control of tank after tank, row after row of this kind of stuff. It's a serious problem.
It is. And look, there's always a risk there. I don't think anyone's naive about that. But you make a judgment and you vet people and you, at the end of the day, say it's important enough that we need to train and equip these members of the opposition. We need to send assistance to the Iraqi army because it's so important that we help them get back on their feet and really improve their capabilities.
Secretary Kerry made a major effort to try to secure some sort of Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement. He made many trips, you were on many of those trips, to meet with the Israelis and the Palestinians. And now that seems to have ended. And Martin Indyk, the special Middle East peace negotiator, he resigned today. So is it over?
It's not. It's not. The whole team is still in place. Frank Lowenstein will be stepping in. He's worked for the secretary for a long time and has been very involved in these negotiations. Look, this has been the work of Ambassador Indyk's life. And right now, while we're in a pause in the negotiations, he thought it was appropriate to go back to the Brookings Institute. But we are trying to get the parties back to the table. We are talking to them both every day, trying to see if they will come back in a meaningful way. But until they do, we'll keep having those conversations because the secretary and everyone else is certainly still committed to this.
Marie Harf, thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
Marie Harf is the deputy spokeswoman at the State Department. Just ahead, does President Obama have a hankering for fast food, or is there another reason he's been sneaking out of the White House so often? And a key player on Team USA is injured. Will that hurt America's prospects of winning its next big World Cup match?